this morning's Business Insight, the expected, the unexpected, and everything in between from last Tuesday's Ohio primary. Governor John Kasich was a big winner in the Republican presidential primary, but does it mean anything? Cincinnati Council member P.G. Sittenfeld's attempt to bring down Ted Strickland in the Democratic Senate race failed. And the Norbert Nadel-Charlie Winburn Republican primary for Hamilton County Recorder was quite a volatile race, but ended up a lopsided victory. Business Courier reporter Chris Wetterick was watching them all and joins Business Watch producer Kelly Leon in the studio with some analysis.
Thanks, Peg. Chris, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Always good to have your perspective. Before we get into particulars, give me your overall, like that night, what stood out to you?
These were lopsided races. They weren't close at all. Any of them that we talked about at the beginning there, they were, 10 and 20 point margins. John Kasich handily defeated Donald Trump 47 to 36% in the state. The Norbert Nadel-Charlie Winburn race. Nadel beat him 58% to 42%. So these were not close races, and I think we did expect the two presidential primaries between Hillary and Bernie and between Trump and Kasich, and Cruz was out there, he finished third. So I think we expected those to be a little closer, and they weren't.
What about the turnout? Were there surprises there?
Yeah, the turnout was near record, particularly on the Republican side. And, you heard some, and we haven't dove into this data yet, and I kind of hope to do that in the coming days. But there was a little bit of anecdotal talk that some Democrats crossed over either to vote for Trump, because they're blue collar workers, and they like some of the things he said about trade policy in this country, particularly his criticisms of NAFTA and some of the other trade agreements we have with countries. And some Democrats are so horrified by the idea that Donald Trump would be president that they went and voted for John Kasich.
Yeah.
So, you might have had some Democrats playing in the Republican primary, but clearly Republican enthusiasm was very, very high in this election.
Is there anything more to say about Kasich? I know we want to talk about the local, but is there, so much analysis I've heard back and forth, Democrats voting for him, I've heard that, but then that actually could have backfired and they were voting for Trump. I mean, do we have to look at, how should we be looking at this from here on?
Kasich's only hope is to get the folks at the convention to nominate him on a contested, when you have a contested convention. If Donald Trump and none of the others get enough delegates, that's his only hope, really, because he can't win enough delegates to win the nomination outright. And so I think that's what he's hoping to do. There's a very little chance of success there, I think.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus. Okay, locally, we mentioned the P.G. Sittenfeld Strickland race and Nadel and Winburn, but let's talk a little bit about the Democratic Party, because there was kind of a lot at stake here for the party. Is that right?
Right. There was a battle in the Cincinnati the Cincinnati Democratic Committee is what it's called, and that is a body that makes endorsements in the mayoral race sometimes, but always in city council races, and that will happen next year. But the seats on the Cincinnati Democratic Committee were elected on Tuesday, so they were battling out for control next year. As you probably know, there's some factionalism in the Democrats in the city. There's a lot of pro-John Cranley people, and there's a lot of anti-John Cranley people. More progressive people who favor things like on-street bike lanes. They love the streetcar project. They want to see some more effort devoted towards low-income housing. So these are all things that they have clashed with the mayor on, and so they were hoping to win enough seats to really, block him from getting an endorsement, and also play a role in those city council endorsements, because it's very, very difficult to get onto city council without the endorsement of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, or the Charter Committee. Independents rarely get elected. It has happened recently with Christopher Smitherman and Jeff Birding when he was basically expelled from the Democrats. He still won election as an independent. So the results of that, we don't really know, because neither side will tell us which candidates they backed, but they both claim victory. They both say that they did very well on Tuesday night. I guess we won't know until next year when that body sits down to make these endorsements. So it's a really strange situation, but neither side really wants to give the other side any information about what they were doing and how they did it and who might or might not be with them. So
Yeah, and I don't know how much more to even say about that. That's just something you're going to, I'm sure, watch and
we will be.
Try to dig into. Another weird situation was the polls closed at 7:30, and then the polls were open until, what, 8 or 8:30?
Maybe a handful of them.
What was that?
This was a bizarre situation. Federal Judge Susan Blott, she noticed and recognized, I think she got some cell phone calls from people who were stuck on that accident on the 275 bridge going across the Ohio River. People were stranded and jammed in traffic there for hours on end. So she heard word that they were there and wanted to vote, and so she ordered that the polls in the counties that are in Ohio, in the Cincinnati area, be open until 8:30 that night. The problem was the Board of Elections didn't get word of that until mostly it was too late. I mean, they said they made an effort to keep those polls open, but I think in many cases they did not. The really unusual thing about this was nobody went to court to ask her to do that. So she, just did it on her own, and that's, I don't know if that's unprecedented, but it's extremely rare.
Okay, all right. Anything else you're going to be looking at as we move forward? Can't wait till the general election,
We'll be looking at it all. We'll see. I think the presidential race in Ohio will be as hot as it always is, because Ohio, typically the winner wins Ohio. So we'll see a lot of advertising, a lot of candidate visits, and we'll be here to write about it all for you.
Great. We're glad you're here for us, Chris. Always fun to talk about politics.